Hello? Okay, I can't hear anything back. But this is Rita Comas Whitney, and I'm just saying I'm really glad that this particular group is meeting, and it's unfortunate that the last two planning meetings have been canceled, especially since that it seems from the warrant list in the town council that we have been
Excuse me, Rita, you'll be asked, the meeting hasn't started, and so you'll be asked at the time of public comment.
I was just sent a message to unmute myself.
Oh,
sorry, the audio wasn't.
This is a, right, this is a webinar. I wouldn't be unmuting myself. So, thank you.
Sorry about that. I wasn't aware of that. My apologies.
Go ahead, Rita.
Oh boy.
Okay. Anyone else would like to speak
Well,
to us on an item not on?
I'm sorry, what just happened?
Yeah, can I just finish what I'm saying then?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for taking my comment. I'm very happy to see this meeting happening tonight. So many meetings have been canceled. The last two planning commission meetings have been canceled, even though we're paying many consultants. And you can look at the warrant list and you can see all the consultants that are being paid for the Stanford Wedge project. And although the town has not heard any updates on that particular project since we did the EIR, the draft EIR, and submitted all of our comments, and other places submitted their comments back in May 13th, I believe it was in 22. And I really hope that since this particular group is meeting, that you can have some type of influence to please move the other things that are happening in town forward, because we're paying for them as a community. We see the warrant list and we're low on money, and I don't understand why we're paying for all of these things when they are not moving forward and we're not being apprised of them in a new government that is supposed to be quite transparent. But thank you for all that you're doing.
Thank you, Rita. Anyone else?
I would like to acknowledge that tomorrow, Wednesday, is Carol Bork's last day. Carol Bork has been one of our planning staff for 25 years. 25 years, quiet, you know, but she was always in the background, just getting it done. And she was a collaborator, and we were a team. We worked as a team for 20 years, the planning staff and us. And so, and Tom Vlasic, and it's another tough loss. I mean, we've been decimated. So it's really, really sad to see Carol go. And I'm having a bon voyage for her tomorrow at noon, if anyone wants to come and join.
Where would that be?
My house?
Okay.
Maybe Marguerite.
Okay. Anyone else?
Yeah, through the chair, apologies for that little mix up at the beginning. I hadn't unmuted the schoolhouse, so nobody could actually hear us. So just recapping that the meeting was in fact called to order, and we started oral communications. And then Rita Comas was our first speaker of the evening for the public comment. So sorry about that. We're all set to go now. Thank you. Next, we do have another caller and phone number ending in 7562. I'll just unmute you now. Just one sec.
Please introduce yourself, please.
Good evening, this is Caroline Bertongen, 100 Palmer Lane. I'm also a member of the PPTS committee. And this is more like a clarifying question. I hope somebody of town council is represented at the meeting tonight. I'm not sure that it's important for the two new buildings that are, or the two new projects that are being proposed today, but as a reminder, remember there were new building codes and requirements that we had to limit meetings, public meetings. And I see that the conservation was part of it, but it was my understanding that as of January, conservation is also supposed to meet with BPTS and trails for any new project instead of separate. It was brought to our attention by Laura Russell at the end of 23 before she left that BPTS, there are some municipal codes that require BPTS to be engaged, and that includes driveways and of course traffic and parking. So I hope that we can use this and follow the instructions. Perhaps I misunderstood, and perhaps somebody can clarify the new rules. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? No hands here in the schoolhouse.
That's it
Great.
for online.
Let's move on to the regular agenda. First item is the Dannenberg residence at 440 Cervantes Road.
Jamie, if you're ready
I'm
to,
just-
Yes,
Oh,
just
yes,
one
pardon
moment.
me.
Let me share my
Just
screen.
announcing, I'm going to be recusing myself, so I'm going to step outside.
Thank you, Gina.
so Jamie, let's just give Gina like 1 second to get out.
No problem. I'll need a moment. Just-
Yeah, come up here, please. Go ahead, Jamie, with the staff report.
Okay, just one moment. I'm hoping that I'm sharing this now. Can you see my screen?
Looks good. Thanks, Jamie.
Okay, great. Good evening, everyone. And Rita, I apologize. I did not have any audio. So thank you for your understanding earlier. Good evening, ASCC members. The item before you tonight is for an architectural review of a new residence, hardscape improvements, landscape improvements, and fencing at 440 Cervantes Road. There is a 740 square foot state exemption ADU proposed through conversion. That is an existing guest house that is not under the review of the under the purview of the ASCC. To note, there are two discrepancies in my staff report. First, the soil movement associated with site development permitting is less than 100 cubic yards. And so that doesn't require review by ASCC. That is a staff level review. And also second, the staff report, I indicated a bocce ball court that they're actually vegetated planters and they are proposed to remain. So apologies for that oversight. The second slide here is the vicinity map. The 440 Cervantes is a 1.03 acre lot and it is zoned RE1A. The lot sits between Meadowwood Drive and Arapaho Court on Cervantes Road. The slope of the lot is 11% and is located in geologic zone SUN. The parcel contains a 10-foot public utilities easement along the front property line and a 5-foot public utility easement along a portion of the eastern perimeter of the site. The site currently includes a 2-story residence that spans east to west with an attached garage near the front of the parcel. A pool, spa, and outdoor barbecue area are located near the center of the parcel, and a shed, planters, and the guest house, which are located in the rear and are proposed to remain. The proposed site plan here is what you're looking at on slide 4. The applicant is proposing to construct a revised driveway area with the entry located on the opposite side of the current location, a new 4,320 square foot 1-story residence and a 660 square foot detached garage. A breezeway is proposed between the garage and the residence. Hardscape improvements are also proposed in the front yard that include 2 3-foot 6-inch low stone walls. With one contains a gate, and the one with the gate connects to a gravel pathway that leads toward the rear yard. New hardscape is also proposed surrounding the pool and the barbecue area. As mentioned before, the existing 149 square foot shed, the pool, the barbecue area, and the planter boxes and the rear, as well as the guest house proposed to be converted to a state exemption ADU, are to remain unchanged. The proposed main residence maximum height is 18 feet. The applicant utilized the 5% bonus for the proposal. The garage height from finished grade is proposed to be 17 feet and 6 5/8 inches from finished grade to ridge height. The current slide shows the front of the residence and the front of the detached garage, which face Cervantes Road. Slide 6 shows the proposed floor plan for the main residence and the detached garage. The floor plan includes a formal entry area, a great room that contain a kitchen and a kitchen in the living area, a pantry. There's a formal dining room, and four bedrooms, an office, and 4.5 bathrooms. There's also a covered patio area in the rear proposed. And there's a covered patio area at the front porch that extends in the front of the kitchen and the dining room area. Patios, the proposed garage contains a space for 2 parking spaces, a gym, pool equipment room, and a half bath with an outdoor shower. The proposed materials include a standing seam metal roof in midnight bronze and a combination of stucco wall accented with stone walls. The windows, doors, and metal trim are proposed in aluminum clad that also in dark bronze. The new low stone wall retaining walls are proposed to match the existing walls on site, and the rear yard stairway proposes stone dry stack stone steps and dry stack walls. Patios are proposed limestone and shown on the top left of the current slide. Existing fencing along the side yard and rear yard are proposed to remain, with the exception of portions where reduced height from 6 feet to 4 feet is proposed in metal. 3 6-foot fences with gates are proposed in metal that connect the main house to the side yard, and then the garage to the side yard, and then in between the garage and the main residence. As mentioned before, the proposed grading is 90 cubic yards associated with of soil movement subject to site development permitting, and soil movement between 51 cubic yards and 99 cubic yards is reviewed at staff level and does not require ASCC approval. Like this is showing up a little bit odd. Okay. The existing impervious surface area is 7,152 square feet. The maximum allowable impervious surface area for the site is 7,662 square feet. The project proposes a total of 7,638 square feet of impervious surface area, which complies with the maximum allowed by the Portola Valley Municipal Code. Here is the proposed landscaping plan, which consists of 10,678 square feet of new landscaping. The site also contains 4,731 square feet of existing landscaping. The proposed vegetation is predominantly native plants, shrubs, and ground cover, and are primarily located in the front yard and the rear yard. The proposal complies with the town's water efficient landscape ordinance. There are no significant trees proposed for removal as part of the scope of work. The exterior lighting plan is shown here. The project proposal includes 19 path lights in total, 14 wall lights, and stairway. And there are several stairway lights. Let me see. 3 stairway lights. Proposed 2 entry lights are proposed And one new entry fixture is proposed above the front door. Just existing lighting to remain includes pool lighting, several step lights to the existing guest house, and guest house lighting. The lighting associated with the guest house will be reviewed during the building permit phase at staff. In response to staff's recommendation for reduced lighting, the applicant reduced lighting around the site and along the driveway area to better comply with the town's design guidelines for exterior lighting. The proposed lighting meets the town's exterior lighting requirements. Public notice was mailed to all property owners within a 300-foot radius on the site on June 26, 2024. The applicant also conducted their own public outreach to adjacent neighbors in January of 2024. No comments were received from adjacent neighbors via email or as a result, of public noticing. Staff recommends that the ASCC review and approve the requested architectural review, hardscape and landscape improvements, and fencing subject to the conditions of approval. Both town staff and the applicant team are available for questions by the ASCC. And thank you for your time.
Right. The ASCC members have any questions of staff?
Yes. The light, the garage light, I presume that has a cap on it at the, thank you.
Turn the mic
I
on.
can't hear.
I was asking if the garage light, if the tubular light has a cap on the top. Yes, it does. We got it covered.
Great. Thank you.
Kenny, any questions?
I just, the 4-foot tall fence looks pretty opaque to me. Has that been assessed for whether or not its opacity meets the town's guideline?
Yes, the fencing requires at least 50% opacity, and so it appeared to comply with the town guidelines. I hope I'm answering your question and understood it. Ken.
Yes. Thanks.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. So does the applicant have any presentation for this project?
No additional presentation because it's a question.
Okay. Is there any public comment on this project? Anyone here?
I think it was one of the positive.
Yeah, go online.
We have Rita first. One moment.
Hi, thank you for taking my comment. This is related to Ms. Dixon leaving the room recused. And I had sent a message to Adrian and she sent me a private message, but it should be stated in the record of the reason why a particular member is being recused so that people that that see this, you know, it's not clear if she's the owner or related to the person or she's working on the project, but that should be in the record. So thank you.
Great. Thank
Can't
you.
be stated in the record.
From my point of view, it was when
Oh,
she
perhaps
when
that
she-
was,
when she recused herself and left the room. She identified that her firm is, you know, the architect for the project.
I'm sorry, I must have missed her saying those words. I did not hear those words except that she was recused.
Okay.
And
Thank you.
perhaps it was said earlier when the sound wasn't working.
It
Thank
may
you.
be. Thanks. Any other public comment?
We have two more. First is number 7. I think that's Caroline Vertonghen. Go ahead, Caroline.
Great, thank you. I think with the neighbors from the records that I read, I believe that neighbors are a little concerned about traffic during construction. And I know this is not your purview, but perhaps you can make a recommendation that the planning department make sure that there are some parking and travel management services provided, because as you know, this is Vaishani Pass. That's where our Ormondale School is. And I just have lived a 3-year project that is still not done. And yes, when the applicants brought this in front of the town, they reassured us all that the parking of the trucks would be on their own property or as much, and that didn't happen. So if this is a project that will take 3 years, I think it's important that we have some traffic management and parking management. Thank you.
Thank you.
And next we have MJ Lee.
Go ahead, MJ.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for doing this, you guys. I live at 100 Meadowood Drive, which is next door to Lauren. And, you know, she's a terrific neighbor and we love her plans. I just wanted to say 2 things. First of all, regarding, there are redwood trees, I think 15 through 20, excuse me, between our properties, or they're on her side of the fence. And I just wanted to say that I know it's not in her plans to remove them, but that if she did need to remove them at some later time, we would be very happy with that, because they do drop a lot of litter on our property. The other thing I wanted to say was that I didn't look at her plans until about half an hour ago, the actual digital plans. And I realized that her house is going to be very wildfire resilient. And I'm hoping that Lauren and her architects will apply for the IBHS Wildfire Prepared Home standard, because I believe she's going to probably meet the plus standard, and she will probably be the only house that I know of in Portola Valley that meets either of the IBHS standards. So I just wanted to thank Lauren and her firm for going to that extra mile to make her home so safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments?
Yeah, we have one more. Christy Corley, go ahead.
No, I missed public comment earlier, so I want to, in general, say that with all the building coming, that if we can go to 500 feet notification instead of 300 feet, because we have larger lots above 1 acre, and that often is just 1 or 2 houses away, and it really is not notifying those that drive roads. I'm mainly saying this so the planners can hear this, that we think as neighbors, we deserve, if our lots are larger, 500 feet to 1,000 feet. I was 6 inches away from 300 feet, and I was not notified on something. So in the future, if you can consider this in the future, I think we're going to need it. So everyone's informed. Thank you.
Okay. Great. Bring us back to the commission.
Oh, I'm sorry. We have one that just
Okay.
raised their hand. Okay. One more. This is Holly Hartman. Go ahead, Holly.
Hi, thanks so much. I just wanted to second that. We're the comment about the 300 feet. We are literally 1 house away and didn't receive any type of notification. And we're on Arapahoe, and parking's also going to be a really big concern.
Okay. Anything else, Holly?
Nope, that's it. Thanks.
Okay.
Okay,
Go ahead.
ready?
Yeah.
I think it's a lovely problem. I think it's, it's bringing it down, which is great to begin with. My only comment, and I was looking hard at the lighting plan, which also looks okay, is that the landscaping inside between the street and the driveway I wish that was a little more natural, a little more all native, just, I mean, that used to be pasture land. So it's a little too contrived for me, just the line of grasses, the line of this, and then the manzanita, it's at least on the outside. But go a little bit rougher and a little bit more native in that bed. But, other than that, I think it's lovely. So I'll wait to hear what my fellow commissioner says, and maybe we'll talk some more.
Right, and
Can I ask Dana a question? How do you feel about removing the redwoods?
Pardon?
I-
Removing the redwoods? I think that's up to the neighbors with each other. I also think there's a higher water table there, so, I mean, that there's water, that the redwoods may be tapped into because of the creeks, but I don't know. I mean, unless they're failing, I didn't see them because we didn't have a site visit. So, I mean, had I been able to put my eyes on them, maybe but I feel like every new house, we should have a site visit.
Right.
That's my feeling on that.
Like the neighbor who called in, I really appreciate the wildfire resilience that's built into the design. And that the architects managed to put that together with something that pretty clearly meets the design guidelines. Yeah, I'm inclined to improve. I'm willing to hear what Carter has to say as well.
okay, thank you. I think this is a really nice project. It is the kind of project that the 18-foot 4-area bonus was really intended to help create. It was to encourage, low slung spreading homes. I like the site design quite a lot in its organizational structure. I wonder where all the boulders are going to end up. I hope they, can be reutilized and not just, hauled to the dump. I share Dana's concerns with the formality of some of the landscape organization and some of the plant numbers. I think that the plant, while I don't see it as a concern from a town standpoint, I wouldn't want this to establish the standard for, how many plants need to be there. I think there's more than the necessary numbers, and sizes, to accomplish, the goals. But I think the roof design, with the lower slope roofs, in between, kind of the roof pavilions, I think is a very nice organizational structure. Will reduce, the height of the buildings and reduce, the kind of, suburban feel that the current house, has along the street. I appreciate the driveway, reorganization to take the parking area, and end up, being able to develop it in a more screened position, instead of the garage being out there, in front of everyone. I think there's a potential for a tree in that location, besides just the shrubs. But again, it's not a requirement. But I do think that parking area, would benefit, from, a little more shade, in that, it's nearly 75 feet, between those, in the parking area in front of the garage. Colors and materials, I think, are exquisite, and really does, represent what is likely to be, the new standard with the building code that we're presented with, in Portola Valley, being 100% non-combustible. Sorry it's taken so long, to get to design review. This is another one of those projects that I think the review of the fire department and engineering and all of the other reviews would not be necessary, to end up, seeing the design review portion of this. And, could be, and I would hope, as we go into the future, that the ASCC will recommend an adjustment, so that you don't have to dot our i's and cross our t's, before you, have confidence, that your design is approvable. Because, from a design standpoint, there's some really nice things that have developed, but wouldn't need to have spent, as many thousands of dollars and, months of time to get there. So I share a little bit of concern about the driveway lights. I spent years on the ASCC before, my current tenure, and for decades, we talked about headlights being what, the wayfinding mechanism for driveways. I see, the intent with the lighting is to provide some, some edges. I think there likely are other mechanisms, and but for this project, I don't see it as a problem in approving, the way that it's been developed. Because I do see the thoughtful nature, and why the lights are in the positions they're on. They are not as much about wayfinding as finding the edges of where the driveway is. So with that, I'd entertain, a motion to approve.
I'd be willing to discuss it. I actually, obviously I've had that time in the ACC to know lately.
That's because you don't have white hair yet.
Oh, I've got some.
Here's the babe in the woods.
But in my time here, I don't think I've ever seen us approve the driveway light.
A driveway light.
Because
Are you making a
I don't
motion?
think we need to do that portion. We can approve it with a condition that they take the driveway. No one's ever needed.
That's fine to me.
So I would move to approve the project
Mhm.
with the elimination of the driveway lights. And I would like to see actually the landscaping for that front bed come back to AFCC member.
And with what direction?
Less,
Okay.
more natural, not as landscaped. Just that front bed that is visible from the street. So that sets the tone for everything else.
Can you be more specific as to where in the front you're talking?
The
one in front?
inside the inside the curve. Just mix it up, soften it. Just, it's too linear. It's too hedgy looking, and so those are the things. And just do we let staff do it, or I mean,
I think a designated member.
a designated member of the ASCC.
At
So
the-
that
at
is
the ti-
my-
At the time of voting.
That is my motion.
A second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Bueno. Good job. Thank you.
Let's move on to the next item. Thank you so much, guys.
Okay, just one moment. Let me get my share screen going again. Thank you all for your patience.
Oh, yeah, sorry, wait.
We're gonna change,
Oh.
change
We're
personnel. here.
changing.
Oh, yes, no
People.
problem. Let me mute myself then and
Yeah.
Yeah, so you guys need to vacate.
You want that one? I had a dog that was just like you.
Oh, boy, I love it. I love it. Half dachshund, I think, and half Jack Russell.
Mine was a little bigger.
It's ferocious.
Yeah, please.
He insists on sleeping outside at night. Fine. Hey. Yes. Bill Lane,
1919.
1919, right. Welcome.
Okay. Thank you for the site meeting this afternoon. We're moving on to the Knapp residence, 857, Westridge Drive. This is a continuation of the meeting that we had this afternoon on site. So, Jamie, can you please start with your presentation?
Absolutely. Thank you, Carter. I appreciate it. The second item before you this evening is for an architectural review and site development permit for a new residence garage, detached garage and associated accessory structures, a new pool and spa, for hardscape improvements, landscape improvements, fencing, and significant tree removal at 857 Westridge Drive. And 790, I believe, 1 square foot state exemption ADU is also proposed. That is not under the purview of the ASCC. To note, while preparing the staff report, the applicant communicated the following changes to the proposal that include removal of the proposed trellis that are shown in the plan set near, which is located near the tennis court, and removal of the proposed vegetated rooftops, the pool house, and the office. In an effort to move the project forward, staff is requiring the changes to be reflected as part of the building permit submittal. Just a moment, I'm trying to get it up to the next slide. 857 Westridge is a 2.86 acre parcel. It is zoned RE-2.5. The lot sits on Westridge Drive between Pinnan Drive and Boya Road. The slope of the lot averages 17.6% and is located in geologic zones SER, SUN, and PS. The parcel, this is the existing site plan. The parcel contains a 10-foot PG&E easement along a portion of the north side of the driveway and a 5-foot public utility easement that surrounds the perimeter of the parcel. The site currently includes a 1-story residence, a detached garage, a tennis court, and swimming pool with with a patio area. The existing residence spans east to west, and the garage is located near the southwestern portion of the site. The parcel is accessed via a long driveway on Westridge Drive. The applicant is proposing to construct a new 5,324 square foot residence located within the same general footprint of the existing residence. A new detached 320 square foot pool house and a 264 square foot detached office are proposed at the southwestern portion of the site near the location of the existing garage. A new 978 square foot detached garage is proposed near the north portion of the site. The existing tennis court is proposed to remain and the size reduced to assist with reduction of impervious surface area on the site. New pathways, hardscape, and a pool are proposed. New fencing and an entry gate are also proposed. The 790 square foot ADU will be reviewed ministerially as required by state law and provided as context. This slide contains the main residence heights for the south and the east, from the south and the east. The proposed main residence vertical height is 24 feet 7 inches and maximum height is 29 feet and 10 inches. The residence remains 1 story. The proposed detached garage, office, and pool house are shown here. And the office and pool house both contain flat roofs and vegetated, as mentioned, the vegetated portions have been removed from the scope of work. From finished floor to the top of bridge, the proposed office height is 13 feet 6 inches and the pool house is 11 feet 6 inches. The proposed detached garage located at the northern portion of the parcel proposes a maximum height of 23 feet and 3/4 inches. The proposed floor plan is shown here for the main house and the detached office. The proposed main house is, as mentioned, 5,324 square feet main residence and contains an entryway access from the north of the site. The west portion of the residence proposes 3 bedrooms, a lounge area, 2.5 bathrooms, and a laundry room. The detached 264 square foot office is accessed near the primary bedroom and contains an open room with a desk. On the east side of the main entry, the proposal includes a kitchen, a dining room, family room, pantry, mudroom, half bathroom, and utility and equipment rooms. The proposed 320 square foot pool house, not shown in this photo, is located south of the proposed office and contains an entertainment area with a bathroom and a covered outdoor area. The proposed materials include a corrugated metal roof in dark bronze. The proposed roofs are pitched with roofs, with the exception of the 2 proposed flat roofs for the office and the pool house. Windows, doors, and porch beams are proposed metal clad, also dark bronze. Exterior siding and window sills are proposed to be limestone and warm earth tones, and cement plaster siding in color Santa Barbara, which is the proposed color. The fascia garage and specialty doors are proposed composite material with a wood grain finished by James Hardy or similar in a washed gray finish stain. The new retaining walls on site and planters will be board formed concrete. Slide 9 shown here shows the proposed fencing plan. To note, the fencing is not accurately depicted in the current plan set, and as a condition approval, staff indicated that the building plans are required to be updated as approved by the ASCC. Existing fencing proposed to remain is highlighted in orange and purple. Proposed fencing is in green, blue, and red. A new 4-foot tall entry gate and wood wire fencing 25 feet from the front parcel line is proposed. At 50 feet, a 6-foot wood wire fencing is proposed along the northern drive and adjacent to the existing fencing inside the northern property line perimeter and along a portion of the eastern perimeter of the property. Staff is requesting ASCC input as it relates to neighbor comments related to wildlife, potential wildlife corridor blockage and potential for trapping wildlife. Neighbor concern indicated locations at the north and the east of the site between the orange existing fencing and proposed red fencing. The project proposes 985 cubic yards of soil movement subject to site development permitting. Comprehensively, the project proposes the following: 360 cubic yards of site work cut associated with the building pad, 185 cubic yards for the pool, and 495 for site work and landscaping. 10 cubic yards of building pad fill are proposed, and 480 cubic yards of fill associated with site work and landscaping. A total of 550 cubic yards of off-fall are proposed. Impervious surfaces are shown on slide 11. The existing impervious surface area is 22,328 square feet. The maximum allowable impervious surface area of the site is 13,306 square feet, and 13,297 square feet of impervious surface is being proposed. The tennis court currently is non-conforming and the size is being reduced and is currently 14 feet 7 inches from the side yard. The proposed distance to the side yard is 17 feet 11 inches. Non-conforming uses and structures are allowed to remain as long as when they're voluntarily demolished and reconstruction is proposed. The project may not exceed 50% of the current appraised value. Otherwise, the structure or use must be brought into conformance with the current zoning code regulations. A condition of approval has been included in attachment 1 of the staff report. To note, the Conservation Committee recommendations included additional reduction of hardscape, and the applicant declined to provide further reductions. With respect to guest parking, the applicant is proposing a permeable paver solution called Basilite, SF REMA, to count toward 50% impervious surface. The town's planning commission approved an alternate paving product called GeoBlock that the applicant maintains is similar in nature to the approved product. AC consideration is requested for the proposed material. Here is the proposed landscaping plan, which consists of 26,185 square feet of new landscaping. Plantings are primarily proposed along the northern and southwestern perimeters of the parcel to provide screening. Additional plantings are proposed surrounding the main residence and pool house. The ASCC may wish to comment and make recommendations related to proposed hedges near the detached garage mentioned by the Conservation Committee as discouraged and provided this neighbor comment. That could prevent views or block views. Conservation Committee also commented that the grass surface proposed surrounding the pool may not be suitable walking surface, and that overall the proposal complies with the proposal does comply with the town's water efficient landscape ordinance. There are 13 significant trees proposed for removal. The original proposal indicated 15 significant trees proposed for removal. An updated arborist report was provided with data that stated June 20th, 2024, based on the request from a neighbor at 835 Westridge. As a result, 4 significant trees were removed from the proposal, which and 2 redwoods were added to the removal plan. The trees removed from the proposal are 3 redwood trees listed as 8, 10, and 22, and 1 post live oak. Tree number 6 is shown on the plans, and that removal would, if approved, would be coordinated with the neighbor, and a condition approval is also attached that would require written agreement amongst the neighbors. The proposal for exterior lighting is included here, which contains 19 path lights and 20 step lights. 24 downlights are proposed also beneath covered porch areas, 6 wall lights, and 3 pool lights. Since the initial submittal, the applicant has reduced the lighting around the site and at the driveway port to better comply with the town's design guidelines. Staff requests consideration and input for 4 proposed driveway path lights and 3 illuminated address lights. The address lights are 200 lumens each and proposed at the entry gate. One of the pathway lights is also proposed at the entry gate on the opposite side. 3 additional pathway lights are proposed along the driveway. The driveway lighting is discouraged in the town's design guideline handbooks, as vehicle headlights are typically sufficient for lighting driveway and entryway features. Some lighting to identify address numbers and driveway entries may be acceptable, but should be considered only when it's determined by the ASCC that reflectors and reflective numbers cannot be used effectively. Staff recommended the removal of the lighting on the entryway features to better conform to the town design guidelines for exterior lighting. In response, the applicant maintains the driveway lighting is proposed for safety due to uphill, downhill, ingress and egress, twists and turns, and driveway length that make it difficult to navigate during the daytime and at night. Public noticing was mailed to all property owners within a 300-foot radius of the site on June 26, 2024. The applicant also conducted their own public outreach to neighbors in May of 2023. The applicant also met directly with neighbors at 835 Westridge Drive to discuss potential impacts associated with the proposal. A total of 6 neighbor comment letters were received. The letters are attached to the staff report. Staff requests that the ASCC review the comment letters and provide input and recommendations. Staff recommends the ASCC review the proposal, provide input and approve the requested architectural review and site development permit subject to the conditions of approval. Both staff and the applicant are available for questions by the ASCC. Thank you very much.
I would like to see the fence slide pull up again because I didn't understand it. They were all different colors. I want to know what triple is. Oh, sorry. Can you pull up the slide with the fencing?
Yes.
Okay.
Are you able to see
Fairly.
just
mean,
what?
so
One moment, let me.
I understood that the only fencing was really at the front from the redwood trees in some configuration. So now I'm seeing red line beneath the tennis court. And then there's a purple line somewhere else. Did I see a purple line? Yeah. Then there's
Yes.
a purple line. So what are those? And
I'm
also, what is this fencing material? It's metal, but it doesn't look like it's see-through. So what is the material?
The proposed material is wood wire fencing, wood and wire. It is not metal. And to better,
Wooden wire, but it looks like you can't see through.
or wire could be metal, so sorry, actually.
What product is that?
I will have the applicant answer that when
Okay.
the applicant is ready. I'm happy to try and explain the fencing, but I also can defer to the applicant if you'd prefer the applicant to provide explanation.
So let me just ask questions and, when I get to my comments, we'll talk about how to reduce the fencing.
This is a question.
Yeah, I know.
question
So
for-
yes, I just wanted to see what it was, red, and then there's purple. Okay, thank you. Those are my questions.
Gina? Any questions? Of staff?
No, I don't have any questions of staff.
Any?
I was wondering if the staff had a perspective on the, this might be getting ahead of ourselves again, but the difference between the, no problem. My question is if staff has a perspective on the difference in the arborists' descriptions of the trees that are being considered on site for preservation and removal, as presented in the submittal and that which was described by one of the neighbors.
So staff, with respect to the Conservation Committee's input on tree number 32, the applicant had additional input from the arborist. And I'm uncertain if staff should provide specific input on that. The other trees that were proposed for removal appear to be either, dead or certain limbs were potential failure. And so staff would, I believe, support that if they could be for reasons of, risk for safety reasons. And overall, the amount proposed associated with development does not appear to be excessive. It appears there's 2 to 3 trees and and so overall, it does seem like a lot of considerations were made to for the significant trees.
Thank you.
Okay. I don't have any, further questions. And the architect and owner team, fill us in on anything we have missed from the field meeting or you want to re-emphasize.
Yes, my name is Adam Biddle. I'm the project great seeing you on site. Those of you who can make it, I think it was really helpful to walk it. What I just want to emphasize, and hopefully you can see in the site, we're really trying to focus our development here for a new home where there is existing development.
Peter can't hear you, so
I'm
he's
sorry.
summing up. Speak up a little.
Sorry about that. Okay. Got that, eh?
Yes.
Hopefully you can see we're trying to focus the development where existing development occurs. And not only just the development of structure, but also use, circulation, driveway. You can see focused activities. Basically, the site is going to act and function similar to what it has probably for the past 50 years. Not only tennis court, pool, rear activity yard, driveway, parking. That's the goal of the project, and it's a very constrained site. As you saw, there's really not much you can do. The parameters are tight, and so we did our best also, similar to the project I just saw before us, trying to keep that, more single story, spread out, fire safe material palette, natural warm earth tone materials that should really recede into the tree lines. So happy to answer any questions you have.
Great. Trevor? Adrian, anything else? Okay. Any questions for the applicant? Okay. Not yet. I've got some questions.
Well, I need clarification on the fencing. I don't know what that fencing is. Right there, what is it?
Yeah, and I have it's the last page of the set from the landscape architect, but it's just a wood wire fence. But I think the graphics up there are reading a little dark compared to what I have in front of me.
Yeah.
They're proposing just a 2-inch by 2-inch wood wire grid. So maybe a little,
Side two?
yeah, a little tighter. So that's why it's reading
Okay.
dark up there, but it's no different than your generic wood wire fence and stained wood.
And that's,
that level.
and that's not a light on the front gate, is it?
I don't believe there is a light.
There's
in the
just a rectangle is what I see.
The
House number?
the house numbers, the 857 is illuminated. And that was one
Thank you.
consideration.
Good.
Any other questions from from the two of you? I've got a couple. Okay. I wanted to be clear that the vegetative roofs, for the office and the pool house have been withdrawn.
They have been withdrawn in coordination with Woodside Fire and Fire Safe. It just was a little bit of a headache.
So what's the alternate material?
Probably going to be a nicer gravel while, seeing the story poles, the roofs aren't too visible to us, but we still want them to be attractive from the higher portions of the site and the neighbor on the opposite side.
And currently in the model and in the drawings, the stone walls that extend above the roof just appear to be similar stone. Is there going to be a parallel cap or a metal cap on those walls?
We're not intending to cap them, no. It's intended to read as a stone element entirely and on the top.
Okay. Okay. And in looking at the cut and fill numbers, I can see exactly why you're where you're at, except that I think there's an opportunity missed that you're paying for to haul away nearly 600 yards of soil that could be reutilized to make the relationship between the house pad and the driveway pad more sympathetic. I know that it does mean going to the planning commission, but it is something that is costing money, and I think you're missing an opportunity to reduce the difference between the driveway elevation and the house elevation. So this is one of the reasons that I'd like to be able to see projects before they're fully baked, so that we can make these suggestions before you've invested thousands and thousands of dollars. That's the end of my questions.
Did I
You
comment
could
on that?
also go down at the bottom of that, there's a very high retaining wall in the very back. Maybe it could soften that relationship.
There's a whole bunch of things. But anyway, it's, you know, we need to respond to what's here.
Right.
But are there any other questions, you know, for the applicant, you know, before we go to the public comments? Okay. Let's move on to public comments. But Peter, you want to come up to the microphone? Can you turn it on? There's a button.
Sure. First of all, thank you guys for the work that you do for the town and the residents. I think some people don't know me, Peter Lippman. I first lived here when I was a graduate student in 1961, and we've lived at our present address for 34 years. The Knapp's house building cluster looks architecturally very attractive to me, well suited for the site. My concerns are with impacts on adjacent properties. There are existing houses close to the east and west. We're in a different situation. We own the property to the south that is an undeveloped investment property. But because it's to the south and because it's downhill, unless there's vegetation in between, we have a virtually unobstructed view of the building complex, which is 180 feet long in an east-west direction. When we purchased the property to the south, there was a virtual complete screening from something in the order of 15 live oaks and redwoods in between. An intermediate owner cut all these, and at present there are only 2 remaining trees in the interior of the south meadow, which would be in the right side of the diagram that is up there now. Both of these are at risk. One, a beautiful big live oak that has a complex structure, is recommended for removal. But I have to think that the arborist who wants very straight trees growing straight up has a more urban kind of approach to things. The beauty of trees, and many of the trees in Portola Valley, are that they have many branches, many forks. Some of them lean, some of them have been leaning for hundreds of years. The other tree that's in a way even more disturbing because it shows a mistake in planning is in the southeast corner of the property, about 40 feet from the property line. It does not show on any of the existing plans, but it is centrally located within the area that is designated a leaching field. If that leaching field were constructed with trenches at 15 feet apart, most of the roots, or at least much of the root system, would be cut, and then the leaching field would overwater an oak tree, and it seems to me very likely that it would die. But I am concerned about the failure to note that tree in any of the plans. And there are other errors, and as long as the existing map is up, I would point out that on the right, which is roughly a southeast boundary, there's an existing fence shown. It's never existed. It isn't there. It never was there. So I'm concerned whether there may be other errors. Certainly much of the I studied architecture for a while, and I appreciate architectural plans, and much of it looks really impressively good to me, but details of like that worry me. In conclusion, Bev and I would hope that there would be some screening of the south-facing facade. need not be huge trees, because looking up relatively low trees do the job. And I'm certainly not interested in proposing that there be a hedge along the property line. But eight or nine live oaks scattered across that area, and even very small ones at this stage that would grow in the future would be, from our point of view, really wonderfully helpful. But also really would appeal to ask for ways to protect the surviving two trees that are both live oaks and are both very healthy in terms of their growth anyway. And I should mention that we met with the Westridge Architectural Supervising Committee at their last meeting, and they endorsed our concerns and our recommendation. So anyway, thank you very much. I'll answer any questions if you have them.
Thank you, Peter. If we have questions, we'll call you back. Any other public comments?
Hello, committee members. My name is Jason Donahue. My family and I have lived on Pinion Drive. Our home is a short distance from 857 Westridge. We've known the Littmans for 17 years, since the time we've come into Portola Valley and lived on Pinion. And the Littmans are fixtures of the community, with Bev retaining many of the original design documents for Westridge houses and literally rolling up her sleeves to eradicate invasive weeds in Westridge. The Malkas are also wonderful Portola Valley citizens and have gone through extensive efforts with their own property to preserve important trees and the natural beauty of the property that their house sits on. Both of these directly adjacent neighbors are of the highest integrity from our perspective and of the highest character. And we believe it's inappropriate that the new owners at 857 Westridge should be able to build without taking into account their neighbors' legitimate concerns and engaging with neighbors to find reasonable solutions from the perspective of the directly adjacent neighbors. We believe that collaboration with neighbors and development consistent with the town's plan is an important part of what makes Portola Valley the town that it is. Our primary concerns with the proposed project at 857 Westridge lie in three areas. The first is that we object to the removal of significant trees and their replacement with hedges. We're very concerned with fire safety in Portola Valley, and the Woodside Fire Prevention District recently published a flyer specifying that the installation of hedges can create a fire hazard due to the accumulation of flammable debris inside of the hedges over time. Additionally, we know that the town plan is, as it should be, very restrictive with respect to the removal of significant trees. Second, we believe that the height at 23 feet, the width and the location of the garage relative to the Malka property to be problematic. As we understand, the Malkas have tried unsuccessfully to engage with the new owner regarding the placement of the garage relative to the Malkas property, as well as around its unusual height and mass, particularly in light of the new owner's proposed plan to remove trees between the Malkas property and the proposed garage site and replace them with hedges. We believe that a 23-foot high detached garage with 3 stalls plus storage areas placed very close to a neighbor's property and blocking the neighbor's view to be inconsistent with the character of Portola Valley. We would ask the ASCC to require the new owner to engage in a discussion with the Malkas to come up with a mutually acceptable and reasonable changes to the design to take down the height and the mass of the structure and or to move its location on the property. And finally, we believe the significant incremental height of the proposed home above the existing envelope of the current structure, given that it's on the ridge line and impairs views of and from Windy Hill and the views of the Lippmans and other town residents to be inconsistent with the character of Portola Valley. We would ask the ASCC to consider requiring the owner to build within the envelope of the existing structure or to engage in good faith with the Lippmans and others to come up with a mutually acceptable solution around the height of the new home. Thank you.
Any other public comment? Great.
My name's Dan Gilbert. Wanted to speak on and build upon the comments that have already been made. I stood in front of this very committee about 14 years ago, seeking approval for our construction at 50 Pine Ridge Way here in Portola Valley. Worked very closely with Carol Bork in getting that approval, and she will be sorely missed. We worked with her kind of in the middle of her tenure, in seeking approval for the construction and landscaping and the building that we actually built. I wanted to build upon the comments that have been made by the previous speaker, and just indicate that I would really love to see this be done as a collaborative project. And I wanted to speak to the fact that it is really possible to work collaboratively with neighbors and get to the outcomes that you seek. I found that the town's approach to this actually worked very well. And we were able to achieve over the course of time. It took us about 2 years worth of socializing the design with the neighbors. We walked it around to the neighbors adjacent on the cul-de-sac, and neighbors up the hill, all of whom had sight lines that would be intercepted by the house. And we had to go through a few design iterations to actually find a suitable win that would actually meet the needs of our neighbors and meet the considerations that, while still trying to achieve many of our design objectives. And we were able to get there. For example, one significant change we made was that the old structure, we removed a pre-existing house, dug a basement, and then built the new house into the old site. The old house had a very steep pitched roof and was encumbered on the roof line with a lot of ugly HVAC equipment, which our next door neighbors and our uphill neighbors had to look at every day. So we were able to, by virtue of changing to a flat roof and moving that HVAC equipment down the hill below the house, behind the house, hide it from view, and therefore we were able to achieve actually a small net increase in the ceiling height inside the house without encumbering the neighbors' view lines at all. So by virtue of getting creative and working with our neighbors, we were able to find a solution that actually met everyone's needs. And I would venture to say that I would urge the planning commission to take the Amalka Cones family's feedback to heart, and to urge the neighbors to work together, because honestly, I feel very convinced that by working collaboratively together among them and with the town planning commission, that a great outcome is possible for all. Thank you.
Any other public comment? Any comment online?
2 hands online. First, we have Christy Corley. Go ahead, Christy.
Yeah, I'm going to say once again, I'm wondering if all of the ASCC members were invited to walk the property and look at the trees. And I would like to hear that answer. And okay, so all of you went. And then I'm going to reiterate again that the 300 feet should be 500 feet. And I would like to see this group take a vote on a recommendation to planning and to council to increase the 300 to 500 and consider that tonight for a vote. And then I'm in favor of protecting trees whenever we can and talking to neighbors whenever we can. I think we're dearly missing Leslie Lambert, who was used her skills well in compromising with the neighbors. So if you start to see letters coming in of concern, then that needs to be taken to the next step. And I'm getting the feeling that it wasn't taken to the next step, and that's what Leslie did for this town. So tree roots anchor the tree in the soil, keeping it straight and stable and absorb water from the soil. Tree roots also take nutrients and chemicals out of the soil and use them to produce what they need for the tree's growth, development, and repair. So I don't want to see all of our lots in the future stripped of trees for cement. So that's just what I'm going to say every time going forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Christy. Anyone else?
We have one more. Is Cone? Go ahead.
Yes, I'm here. I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead.
Yes, hello. My name is Lara Cohn, and I wanted to introduce our family, the Malkas. We are relatively newer neighbors. We've been here for about 2 years now. We've been in the Bay Area for about 15 years, having spent a great deal of time in Hillsborough and Woodside. And we really selected very carefully the town of Portola Valley, which we dearly love already. We selected it for very specific reasons. The respect for nature and wildlife is something that we greatly cherish and really hold valuable. The understated approach to architecture is very appealing to us. And paramount was the community that we were enormously impressed with around the small town feeling of caring neighbors who are fairly close and respectful, and just create a wonderful fabric of a community and acceptance. We were thrilled to meet the Knapps in June. They stopped by our home to introduce themselves, and we had a lovely conversation around children and schools and dogs and various types of social type of items. We offered to host them for a dinner when they moved in, and we were excited to see 2 children just a little bit younger than our children moving in next door. And that was quite exciting for us. They assured us at that time that they had no plans yet. They had not developed them. This was in June. And that as soon as they had something tangible, they would reach out directly and share those with us. And we were excited to see how those would turn out. We did not hear from the Knapps again at all. On July 7th, George Savage sent a note to my email with the plans. Unfortunately, I was in the hospital gravely ill for months. I was at the Mayo Clinic in both Scottsdale and Minnesota. I was unable to receive that email and completely unable to engage at all, and not on any kind of electronic communication or conscious for much of it. So I was receiving serious medical treatment, which I am still receiving 6 days per week in San Francisco. The approval, that was on July 7th that the note came to me, the email came to me. The approval happened on July 23rd, not leaving very much time. Unfortunately, my husband, Ben, also residing at the residence, did not receive any notice at all, so he could not pick up the reins and engage. We did not receive any mail to the home, and he did not receive anything directly. So we kept visiting the town and asking the town how to engage. The town assured us that the right time was to provide feedback when the story polls went up. So that was really our first opportunity to engage in any way. We have not received any kind of reciprocation around engaging or collaborating, but we certainly would love to do so and would love to work eagerly and well and neighborly with the new family moving into town. And we love Portola Valley. So I'll just leave that as an introduction to who we are. And my husband, Ben, will share more information around the building specifically.
Thank you. Ben? Can you promote him to the panelist?
He's not an attendee at the moment. To join in a bit.
So if you would, I am an attendant.
You are?
I hadn't raised my hand. Raise your hand.
Oh, Ben? Okay,
Ben.
let me,
Ben.
let me,
Ben.
hi, Ben, I'll promote you. Yeah, there you are. Not yet. Microphone, please.
I have limited vision, and so it's a little difficult for me to navigate these kinds of things real time, but I'll do the best I can. Okay. Tell me when you can see what's on the screen.
You should be able to, so at the bottom of the Zoom window, you should see share screen. It's a green color. Hey. Nothing yet. Oh, here we go. Yeah, there you go.
Laura, give some background. I just want to create a visual representation of what this happening. That we share a 670-foot boundary with the Knapp property.
Microphone.
We share a 670-foot boundary with the Knapp property. It runs to the east of their property and to the west of our property. Our house is the house that was redeveloped at 835 in 2006 by the Van Cunningham and Van Hart family. When they got approval, they respected the Cully's input, moved it off of the setback and dropped it 5 feet down. And that's the right side picture. So that is the reason why our house sits low into the hill and part of what sets up the problem with the garage. And so we'll get to that. So we would love to be supportive of the property. We think actually visually it's a nice representation and could be a great addition to the neighborhood. However, there are 3 major conditions that we're concerned about. The first one's been talked extensively about, and these are our conditions. There's other things that the ASCC may be interested in. The first one is that the removal of the significant trees. I think it's about 13 or 14 trees, most of which are between the garage and our house. That corridor is where the biggest impact of the tree removal is. And it actually represents what a new sightline would look like once those trees of that big garage. And that's what's the single source of stress on the visual representation. The second one is the detached garage is big. It's 44 and a half by 24 and a half, 17-foot roof line and 23 feet when you're looking at it from the bottom side. It sits at 623 feet in elevation. Our house was dropped to 605. So it's 18 feet above the floor of our master bedroom to start before you get into the 23 feet from that side. So it is a towering garage from our viewpoint. And all we've asked Trevor and Andrew to do is think about lowering the roof line so that it isn't quite so apparent. We've also asked, it's a 44-foot wide garage with a trash storage area and a bike storage area on either side and 3 bays in the middle. And what we suggested is if you took the storage areas out and moved it to the right, you'd save 11 to 12 feet. And that would pull it off of our property, lower the roof and lessen the impact. It was a reasonable request in my opinion, and we have heard nothing but no. The last thing is the tennis court. The tennis court sits on top of a natural landslide. It's an active landslide. It's marked ND terrain, and it sits 85 feet above the creek bed, and it's a straight shot down. It's at a 41% slope. In case anybody is a skier, a 41% slope is KT22. It's steep, high, and moving. And we'd like a full review of that element before anything is done. And what we're concerned about is any kind of construction, which is 14 feet from the property line and actually 2 or 3 feet from where the slope begins, could cause that slope to move. And if that slope moves, it would be very damaging to our property and the Littman's property. And we want to be super careful about it and have it fully vetted, not just pass through as a refurbishment of an existing non-conforming property. Okay. This is a representation of where the hedges are. They're actually right next to where our sight lines are, and the hedges block the sight lines because the house was dropped and we can't see anything but through that corridor. The garage sits far from the rest of the house. And if you look at the right-hand side, that's the roof line. And it's represented by the flags. If you look carefully, you can actually see the flags. The roof line of the garage is visible from the second story of our house and from an entertainment area below. And some people got a chance to see that today, but if you haven't, I'd be happy to show it to you. The tennis court, again, is not just on an active landslide, it has no drainage. There's a tube that comes out of the tennis court. It's in the third from the left in this top row, and it dumps water into the corridor with no drainage provisions whatsoever. And it represents what I think is the risk to destabilizing the hillside. That tennis court has been there a long time. The slide is actually more modern than the tennis court. And so that could be part of the story here, is the tennis court drainage is causing the slide. We've lost trees on that slide path. One very large tree came down, I think 2 years ago. Peter will know better than I. But it's probably a 36-inch tree that fell over and is in direct path of the slide, and probably I would suggest it might be destabilized. I'd love to see a thorough geological review. The concrete on the tennis court is also buckling. And again, the KT22 reference in terms of the slopes. I also think there are things that the ASCC should consider. We talked about the height of the building. It's not my biggest issue. I'm more concerned about the garage, but it's something that's come up. And I know the Littmans have an issue from their perspective on making sure it's screened. And we have a fencing issue with the corridors. It's an active wildlife corridor. These are photos from our family room. Butterflies, deer, turkeys, you name it, they come through it. And we would like to see that preserved. And the only way to preserve that is change the fencing positions that are in place. Let me try to describe the fencing scenario, which is the problem. The fence has a 150-foot common boundary, which is on the property line, our fence. Our fence circles 1 acre of a 3-acre property and provides wildlife corridors on either side, but the 150-foot segment is on the boundary. It then splits and moves away from the boundary, and the NAP proposal currently has a fence coming on the boundary line, creating a triangle wedge where wildlife can get trapped both in the front and in the back, and a double fence in the middle. And if you go back to the tennis court, there's the tennis court fence, the proposed middle fence, and then our fence on a 40-foot span and a 42% slope, which is prohibited for fence design in Hill Valley. Anything more than a 20% slope should not have a fence on it. And so I would suggest that that fence between the tennis court and our property doesn't make sense. And in fact, the tennis court fence should suffice for a property boundary. Or take the tennis court fence down and move it actually closer to where the tennis court is going to be. Because at this point, there's 3 feet of removed court surface that could open up. You can see in the lower left corner, the left side boundary, which is 14 feet 7 inches. They're claiming is 17 feet or more now, but that's actually not counting where the fence is. The fence is still going to be at 14.7. Only the pavement stops at 17. The second is just big picture. The house was 84 feet. All our buildings in the house were 84 feet from the property line. This garage is now 20 feet from the property line. So it's a massive change in the volume of the house towards the property line. The ADU has a similar move that I just learned about today. And going back to the tree concern and the arborist report, the arborist made very significant errors. Trees that were on our property that were claimed to be on their property, trees that didn't exist, that were on, trees that existed that were not on, trees that were mislabeled. I actually called the arborist over and said, you need to correct this because a bunch of decisions are going to be made with respect to the arborist report, including civil, drainage, construction, and geology, which without the benefit of a corrected arborist report are inaccurate. So we'd like to see everything take into account where the errors are in the plan that Peter mentioned, I've seen, and make sure that everything is actually working in concert and together. So what we're asking for is a continuation to make sure that everybody has a chance to review the material. It's not sent out at 9 o'clock at night on a Friday before a Monday meeting, and that we can actually have productive conversations between neighbors to try to rectify some of the issues that are coming up between the two houses.
Thank you, Ben. Okay. Any other public comment on this issue? Sure.
Response to some comments that were made by an earlier speaker. There has been interaction very cordially with the NAPS a little more than a year ago. And I tried very hard to meet with them before this meeting to discuss the points that I just raised with you. But it was extraordinarily difficult because of the time frame. This meeting was not posted in the town calendar until something like 8 o'clock Friday night of a holiday weekend. And you guys are looking at material, 405 pages of material that you can't possibly have absorbed unless you spent full time on it since Friday night. So my general comment is please, let's work on scheduling meetings earlier, making material available earlier, and making it possible for neighbors to sort out some of the possible confusions and uncertainties and problems before taking them to you. I really would have preferred to do that informally rather than to give the presentation I did tonight. Thank you.
Any other follow-up? Actually, before that.
One online.
One-on-one?
Christy, you can go ahead. Oh, did we already hear from Christy?
Yeah.
Oh, pardon me. Sorry.
I just wanted to also agree with what was just said, that you can't put out something Friday this important and nobody wants to spend their holiday weekend working and reading information, but I like multiple steps to get everybody to a better place. When you have multiple neighbors writing, it is very important to pull everyone together and take a step back and communicate. So I would like to see that written in something that, 3 or 5 or more letters that the planner has to make the communication happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Christy. No other.
Respond that did occur.
Okay.
We're used to spending Friday nights and weekends studying. That's what we do.
From the applicant's point of view, do you have any brief follow-up?
Yeah, I'd like to just give a little follow-up just from what you heard. And Jamie can hopefully validate the amount of public outreach that Andrea and Trevor did way back in May last year. Westridge HOA is a pretty significant organization. What they require as far as site visit, outreach, they dropped off a handmade letter, invitation, which many accepted, hand delivered to over 40 addresses, well beyond 300 or 500 feet, almost a mile radius. And all those comments were positive. We cannot force people to engage. We cannot assume what their priorities are. We understand there was a situation next door, but there's nothing we can do on that part. We gave almost a month for neighbors to coordinate, whether it's email or in person with Andrea and Trevor. I do a lot of public outreach, no matter if Portola Valley, Woodside, Los Altos Hills. Have a system down, a timing down, engagement down, give them advice on what to do. I think they've done an excellent job. Now, the timeline from when we got HOA approval, which we met on site with George, walked the site, went through their process, took a couple months to get to pre-application. And obviously we have, the staffing shortage here, which we all know that you mentioned the time we're all dealing with. It is what it is. It's in all jurisdictions. It's not just here. But that took another couple months before we could submit in December. Now, it's a two-way street. A neighbor can't just reach out to planning without reaching to us. We provided all the contact information, the letter, the invitation back in May 2023. That's an open invitation. The drawings have not changed in almost a year and a half. And for us to go through a 7-month ASCC process, which I know, Chair, where you had commented is, I agree, probably a little more technical than it needs to be and should go to ASCC a little quicker like other jurisdictions so we can move it along and get the proper design guidance. That's a long process. A lot of patience on their end. A lot of emails we're getting passive aggressively through planning. And you have some of them in front of you. And some of those friends of the neighbor came today. Now, the adjacent neighbors, I'll say 95% of them have been super positive. The Littmans down below. Next door, you heard on the speakerphone today. That's normal neighbor correspondence. What's happening along my shared property line? What's the noise? What's the parking? Some of these things. But you got to recognize people have a right to design and build the house of their dreams on their lot. And I think we're talking a single-story structure and an accessory one that has almost zero use besides parking where parking currently exists. So I would not penalize them for what you're hearing here. I think it's a little deceiving. I think the record and what you're seeing in front of you in the staff report speaks for itself, and Jamie could probably validate. But I'm just gonna say, they're amazing clients. They've been a pleasure to work with, and I hope you can take that into account.
Thank you. Any other come
You
up.
have to come up.
Sorry, I'd just like to make a couple comments. We can respond to what Adam said. The first is we never received notice in May of 2024. We've been saying that over and over and over again in writing. We were totally taken by surprise that the plans were already filed. We found out about that only in July, and they were filed in April of 23. We found out in July of 23, they were filed in April of 23. We were never noticed. We were very upset to find out that we were not noticed. And we feel like perhaps they didn't notice us because they knew that so much of the activity was moving to our side of the property line. So we are deeply, deeply concerned about the things that we've laid out, and we don't feel it's something that should be taken lightly. And we were not engaged, despite the fact that they came over and introduced themselves in June. They promised they would share plans with us and do it personally. They never did. And I think that's similar to what you heard from the Littman. Sorry, there are 4 adjacent parcels. We're 1. The Littmans are 2, so that's 3 of the 4.
Thank you. Okay, I'm gonna pull this back, close the public hearing at this point, and
I would like to know what happened with Lost. Did they approve it? Did they,
Yes.
were there any conditions, anything like that?
They approved it, and they attempted outreach to the neighbors that were unable to be contacted. George was very thorough.
George Savage is on Lost now?
Yeah,
It
he's
was
one
his
of
first
co-
one,
co-
so-
co-president. I
Literally,
think,
he
so.
went and we waited
Yeah.
for another month while he was like, well, I need to contact like 5. So we just waited and we're like, tell us if you hear anything from him. But
Good job, George.
yeah,
So he went through, we did get the approval that allowed us to then submit. And I will note that with the emails from Ben, or the 835 neighbor, HOA and George, and I don't remember the other gentleman's. Ben met with them. He reached back out to us. Trevor and I met with George again, and we attempted to re-engage, and, they just said, hey, give it another go. And it's in the record. We gave it another go. Sometimes you can just agree to disagree. You can only do so much. Thanks.
Dana, do you have comments on this project?
Comments on the site. Want me to dive in?
Sure.
I've been taking notes all night, so there are all kinds of things. And I'm just gonna stop because this is a big one right in the middle. Invasive management, now. You have euphorbia, you have invasive grasses, the whole place is crawling. And you're gonna pay for it next year because this stuff has already gone to seed. So, I mean, the grasses around the pool, the euphorbias everywhere, and there go my glasses, and the Detrichium. So anyway, just invasives management. I am also curious about the reduction of the height of the building. I actually love the project. I think it's beautiful. I just trying to think about, yes, 4 adjacent neighbors, and what can we do to massage this thing a little bit? So can we pull the roof line down a little bit? Lighting, no lighting on the driveway, so that comes out. I don't think you should do any oaks along the driveway. I think it would be really great if you guys, with your neighbor, could work out the planting, because I would assume once you take the redwoods out, maybe you put a couple of toy-ons in, and if that upsets the neighbor, no landscaping, and they can mitigate from their side. If they want to keep that view line open to the ridge, that they can screen you. Because I think it's gonna look really good, just with some low stuff going up the driveway. Clusters of Torion, I said, no oaks along the driveway. And people just seem to stick a live oak in where they think something needs screening. And that's ultimately 100-foot tree. You don't put an oak every 20 feet. That's why Portola Valley is overplanted right now. I mean, you even have to the right-hand side of the driveway as you're approaching the house, 5 or 6 live oaks. Why? I mean, and next to your swimming pool, all those leaves are going to blow into your pool. There's nothing harder to walk on than a live oak leaf, especially around a pool, and they don't break down. And anyway, you just might want to look at that again. I think you want less planting. I think that tree below the pool should stay, and I think you could prune it. I think arborists are stuck because everybody wants to be safe, and they have no choice but to say, cut it down. I mean, they have their liability issues, but that tree looked really good to me, and I thought it was fabulous. I just thought that those low branching, and so if you want to remove the tree, prune it. I think that would be wonderful. Even the center tree as you're coming down the driveway, I think that other tree, it's not so Atherton-y to have, it's Atherton to have a tree in the middle of a circle, that you light and stuff like that. I think the 2 oaks right there are lovely together. I thought that was a nice relationship. So I don't see the need to take out that second oak. The fence stuff, we have to understand because you don't want to have even double fencing. Double fencing, it looks stupid. It looks ugly. Work it out. You guys, if you can't work it out, one fence, just one fence line. Don't trap animals. Don't do stuff like that. So, either figure out a way or don't fence it. Or just don't fence it. We're dark. We don't like fences. We don't like hedges. How many times today did we hear the word hedge? Hedges. There are no hedges in Portola Valley. There are islands of planting here or there. But, yes, we don't hedge. We don't light driveways. We don't do stuff like that. The pool lights should be shining back at your house and not across the valley. So, you guys take the burden of that. I'd also curious about your HVAC and your pool equipment, where those things are going to be, and just that there's no spill off, there's no sound spill off headed in anyone's direction. I think below the tennis court, there should be planting. Somebody obviously came in and took out a lot of trees, in that meadow. I think meadows are at a premium in Portola Valley, as far as I'm concerned. I love meadows, but I think apparently there's going to be a 10-foot retaining wall, down there. That needs to be screened. That needs to be screened beautifully and probably with some trees, so that the Littmans are not looking up at a retaining wall. 10 foot, that's a big ass retaining wall. Okay, arborists in the tough spot, no landscaping down the driveway, maybe lower the roof line of the garage, if it gets to be a stinker. I hope you guys can all collaborate. I know that you guys have done a lot of outreach. So I appreciate that. And just now being in the final run, we can do this, we can work through this stuff. Because I think it's a beautiful project. But you just got to hear these people who are looking into your property. That's tough for them, and it's tough to see lighting. And, a lot of times ASCC, if that back tree came out, I mean, I would want to know what your ceiling lights are like in the living room. Are there going to be a lot of spotlights? Are people going to be looking up into light? We don't want to see that happen. Okay. Oak near the septic system. We need to look at that, and that oak needs to stay, and that oak needs to stay healthy. Fencing, we talked about that retaining wall. better collaboration, blah, 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 not in the ridge line. I mean, those are the tennis court. I think that's it. You know, I'm a little worried about reflectivity off the roof and with solar panels. But think about that. So, you know, those are my comments, and I think we should engage after you hear everybody's talk.
Great.
Okay.
All right. So I guess with, Dana, you brought up the main building height. I personally don't take issue with it. I mean, it does go above the existing residence there, but I don't think it feels substantial or out of proportion there. So I maybe kind of disagree on that one. And yeah, the garage, I think it could be something where the roof line is changed. I mean, walking along that side area, it really didn't seem all that visible. I can understand, you know, in looking at the numbers and it feeling huge, but I just in the site visit, it felt fairly well screened. And I agree with Dana in that I do think along the driveway there, you know, thinking about the plantings there and providing something that is, you know, screening, but not screening too much, you know, respecting that view from the neighbors through and being able to see the hills. I understand wanting to maintain that in some way, and so not wanting to create something that's very opaque for light as well. And yeah, I think the oak that's down by the pool, I think I would agree that I mean, I honestly, I don't think I know an arborist who wouldn't recommend removal just because, as Dan is saying, liability, it has a split trunk. I mean, it checks all the boxes for removal. I mean, it does feel like could be significantly, you know, could be pruned. Is there some way? Because it could be a really beautiful feature, and I think it does probably provide some nice screening kind of from below. But at the same time, I don't want to take on the liability of telling someone to keep it myself. And yeah, an interesting comment with the oak and the leach area, because it's not on the plan, so it's hard for us to be able to do anything about that. But the other thing I would say is I think the project is really nice. I think you guys did a really, it's a beautiful house. The materials are great. You obviously, you know, worked hard to use materials that are fire resistant. And I also understand, you know, when you have projects where you do have a long driveway and you're dealing with these fire truck turnarounds, it is extremely difficult at times to accommodate that, especially when you're working on a slope site. So I think I understand, you know, I think there was some comment made, maybe we were on the side of, oh, you know, the old garage location is nice. And I think, sure, but, you know, we are dealing with a situation where we do have a fire truck turnaround that's required. And I can understand why you placed it where you did. And I think, again, just on site, looking at the story poles, I felt like the massing, you know, a lot of the footprint was kind of within where the existing house is, kind of consistent with the heights. I know there's the kind of the main space that gets taller, but that kind of was the only area that did feel taller. And I don't think there's anything wrong with there being, you know, variation of height. And in fact, it might be kind of nice, you know, as you are looking up, that you don't just have a straight visual line, you know, it creates some variation that is kind of consistent with the terrain. And I think that that was it. I understand the kind of the ASCC current feeling of no driveway lighting. I don't know. I don't really object to it. You know, someone's walking out, getting their mail. I mean, I understand that use. It seemed like there were maybe only 3 or 4 along there. I suspect I will be overruled on that one. But I do think it is, if you are walking your trash out at night, walking to get the mail, I think it is kind of nice to not have to have a headlamp or a flashlight or something in your hand if you're juggling things. That's all my comments.
I guess I would start with saying it seems like there's agreement that just generally architecturally it's a fine project in terms of the materials chosen, and we understand that there are new constraints that you're working with that didn't exist when the original existing house was put in, such as the fire truck turnarounds. With regard to it's oak number 32, is that the one? The big one? I'm inclined to defer to the Conservation Committee's assessment and my fellow commissioners' instinct on keeping that one, in particular because it doesn't put other structures on the property at risk. I don't see a unique reason why we would approve the gate number light and driveway lighting that's unique here. That's would be a reason to set a new precedent of approving that. You'll have reduced maintenance by using reflectors. And personally, the trip out to the mailbox without the ambient lights so you can see the sky is actually a really nice thing. My kids think it's fun that you have to grab a headlamp going out the door. I have a list, a short list of things here. The roofing material, I guess it needs to, the roofing material that's not specified because it's replacing a green roof. I guess that should at least get staff reviewed for compliance in terms of the reflectivity. My best recollection of a project with visibility concerns, projects that are on prominent hills, is in my short experience, are gonna cause controversy. They in town, they never can. I've seen them not able to please everybody. My understanding, my take is that there's an entitlement that exists with the properties based on the town ordinances and codes. And so insofar as the structures lie within those entitlements, I don't think we have much power to remove those entitlements. I do think that the garage plate height seems high. And so in the past, I can recall a project where we asked to reduce the plate height in order to help with neighbors' concerns there. So I'd be interested in my fellow commissioners' thoughts on that. I don't think we should approve floodlights on the tennis court in town. I do think the fences should all be compliant with code. I agree that double fencing is it's really unnecessary. I can't see why we couldn't come up with a solution that didn't trap wildlife. And I think that's it.
Okay, thank you. I think it's a nice project. It's an awesome site. The organizational structure is essentially what most would expect. I think the tail wagging the dog on this thing, is a tennis court. It applies pressure in places that if the tennis court weren't there, would be relieved. So there's, so I had just kind of a general question about, whether the tennis court, is a leftover vestige, of something that was, or if that's, something that, would be done. Let me just, kind of get through my thoughts. Because it's pushing, on a lot of things, it's pushing on the buildable flat area, it feels like it's pushing, the house, kind of back into the beautiful knoll that is there. Where if the house could, could slide, towards the tennis court site, could relieve some of the pressure, creating the gouge, on the back of the kid's bedroom. And with that, then there would be some relief, on where the garage, and the fire truck turnaround would be. So this again is, the reason that, going forward, I hope the ASCC has an opportunity, to see design, there's still scribbles and sketches, and, then, your neighbors don't feel compelled, to come out and feel like we're going to approve it. I think there's some additional information that, is needed. That there's some omissions, in the survey, in the southeast corner of the site. Because if, they look at the, all of the available, current aerial photography, there are trees, in those locations where part of the septic system is planned and would help guide us, in our thoughts about screening and at the same time, I really like the grass. I like that it is open. I do think some limited amount of screening on that lower edge of the property, would help preserve things. I was not aware, that there was any slide activity below the tennis court. So I'm a little surprised about that, considering the age of the tennis court. I do think, because of the constrained nature of the site, and the pretty significant visibility, from across the ravines, that there needs to be an overall thought process, about where the pool equipment would be, and the HVAC equipment, because with as much surface area as the house has, there are going to be some significant load. I would want to make sure that we get through, what the real roof solution is, for the office, and the pool house, because if those weren't, the vegetated roofs, I'm not sure they would be flat. Because I think they, particularly the pool house, starts to feel like, what might be one of the pavilions. So, then there's some orientation issues, around the deal. I'm uncomfortable with the situation, between the property. I know there's been, communication and miscommunication. In looking at the current location, I really don't have any significant issues with it. It does feel a little tall. The bicycle, my first reaction was, if we reoriented the bicycle route, into more of a square, alignment with the doors facing the driveway instead of facing the neighbor, that would eliminate the obvious, activity, on that, into that side yard and focus that activity towards the house. I mean, towards, to the interior of the property. And I think, something as simple as that would then take that light that might want to be there for the doors, away from that side. At the same time, the orientation of the neighbor's house was clearly that was a side yard, even though that's a pretty important room, to them. They didn't orient that room towards the view. They oriented that room towards an interior pastoral landscape. I was on the ASCC when that house was approved. And it was really a very closed-in situation, and the screening along that side was really super substantial. Most of the existing screening that was to be preserved, a lot of that has either died out or not been successful. So I think there's some mutual screening along that side. Fencing in this situation is more complicated than I've seen in a long time. When fences don't follow property lines, it creates clear problems. The issue here is that the fence that is causing the problem is not your fence, so you don't end up having control of it. So to me, there's a reason that the state law requires that fences be on property lines, and the cost for fences be split. Because that is the appropriate response when a fence is going to be there. So where the fences are not aligned with the property line, I would recommend that you all agree to put the fence back on the property, and do one fence, rather than it being first come, first served. And so I think there's, with the combination of things, I think there's, some opportunities that I know in my comments, I've provided, opportunities, for the owner of the design team, to maybe get more out of the project. And I'd recommend that you take the comments, and think about it, and see if you all can coordinate some of the inter property relationships, in a way that is in tune, with the tone of the ASCC comments. And I think the majority of the public comments have been pretty well attuned, to no blaming anybody, but looking for, good solution. Because I think that there's some good things to come out of this. And I do support preserving, I guess it's 332, in some way, because I do think it does, something effective in the broader landscape, of breaking up the view back to the house. And I think that there's an upper portion, of that tree that's pretty good. And I agree with, Jana, there isn't an arborist that doesn't always recommend, taking a tree down unless it's perfect. Somehow there's a profit maybe by thinking, recommending trees to be removed. But that tree is not insignificant in mind, to helping. And I know it's, it seems to be kind of right in the middle of the main living room window. So I'd like for y'all to, for this to be continued with maybe some more comments, I'd like us to resolve our comments, but I think there's quite a few things that are still outstanding to be resolved. But I'd want to encourage the opportunity to improve. Rather than, sticking your, heels in the ground and saying, there's no way in hell I want it approved the way it is.
I wish we could have had a preliminary meeting. And
Wh-
I
when-
think
when
that
you-
would have been really helpful for you.
When you first submitted it in 23. So, part of the reason Dana and I are back here, is to try to make some shifts. So, I'd encourage the four of us to, talk about this a little more, and, if you think I'm all wet, you can make a, develop a motion to approve, I'm all for it as well. But I just think that there's some outstanding stuff.
That we need to see again.
Well, or, to confirm that they really do want just, just exactly the way it is. Or you can, at this point, I'd open this to the applicant to, talk about it.
Yeah, we're in a position where we could approve with some conditions, and then you wouldn't have to come back to us.
Sure.
Yeah, there's a lot to, so I believe tree 32, I don't take an opinion. It's a beautiful tree, right? So I think we'd all agree we'd go back to the arborist, and I mean, his back and forth with the conservation committee is kind of like our hands off. So it doesn't block our view. I think it actually frames two views. So I'm all in favor of, let's see if it can stay. So I don't think Andrew or Trevor would disagree on that at all.
We didn't ask for it to be removed. They told us to stay. Like you said, it's not safe.
I think the removal of the pool and the structure. No. It,
I think, or I would be worried, I don't know, you're the geologist, which is, that would somehow destabilize the whole.
it doesn't impact the design. The removal of the existing pool and that structure are probably going to be the most sensitive piece to that tree and preserving. So that's the arborist's job to, so I think we're in agreement on that. The garage plate height, we brought this up with ideas, and it's in the dialogue back and forth. Unfortunately, I don't think it was reciprocated as we wanted, but I have multiple ideas to lower, and I've shared with Trevor, at least a couple feet. So we can get creative with that, no problem at all. The fencing, I'm not necessarily the fence guy, that's more the landscape architect, but yeah, we can, I don't think that's one that's gonna be a hard one to resolve.
We don't want, yeah, we don't want a double fence. We don't want to trap animals. We don't want anything that's ugly. As you noticed, we didn't really place fences anywhere else in the property. We're not trying to add a bunch of fences.
Yeah, so just note like those fences that aren't on the property that I mentioned don't exist. That's just left over from the land survey. They're not on our property, so no problem with that. The tennis court is a deal breaker. That was one of their, being avid tennis players. I mentioned that in the early presentation. I knew you weren't there, but that's one of their fall in love with the site. They're both. I don't know that pickleball is yet an approved item. Tennis courts are different beasts. Yeah, no. We'll avoid the whole pickleball thing. So that is a driver, the trees, the topography. I will note down by the leach field, I thought we have the tree on there. It might be a little too high on the property, but we will correct that location of the oak tree that was brought up. And the leach fields there's plenty of room to route around and.
Yeah, there's actually kind of three clouds, there's the tree that's kind of in the middle. And then there's a big group over in the southeast corner. And there's another group, partway between this group and this group. So, if you look at it on Google Earth, to me, that would help with the alignment of the potential, some shrub planting, so that you could still see the grassland, but break down some of the future views.
Yeah.
So,
Can I add one note just on the screening? That was, brought up to us last week. It is a vacant lot, there's no one so it should be a dual layering as it should be between all property owners when talking screening. It's not just one side. It does need to be, and then there's the maintenance piece. And if there's no development down there, it is gonna fall. So, but they're open to something in that corner, for sure. There's just nothing that exists down there at this
I'm
time.
not trying to make it odd or, you know, to amplify the property line, because I think that the more it bleeds across the two properties, the more successful it is. But I do note that, you know, we've got leach field and future leach field, and you know, there's just some moving parts there that I wanted to try to, you know, make sure it gets resolved. So, thank you.
I have a question for staff. The tennis court refurbishment and the building permit process, that's subject to civil engineering approval? Like,
Yeah, my understanding is that the geologic review assessed the tennis court. I think, Jamie, can you confirm
Yes,
that?
if you read the geotechnical report, it did assess that.
thank you.
Oh,
And it will be further assessed if necessary. The geotechnical engineer always goes on a site visit as part of the building phase, potentially the planning phase, but I'm certain I'm on the building phase. And the geotechnical engineer is very familiar with what has occurred, you know, in the history in Portola Valley, because that geotechnical engineer was involved in establishing the geotechnical map.
Go ahead, Adam.
Just one note for you for the coordination of whatever happened to the tennis court and what Ben brought up. We actually share the same geotech engineer, Romig Engineers. I don't know if he knows that, but so the coordination should be pretty streamlined with whatever actually is happening on whose property or not. So it has been pretty extensive, the geological report on our site, probably double what a normal geotech report requires to basically, you know, prove what old potential maps showed was not true on the opposite side of the site. But we can't speak to what's on the property.
So what I'm
There's a- there's a
suggesting
home that-
is that we send you home, you know, with a good feeling, you know, that this is approval, you know, very approvable project, is not major problem. You know, there's some housekeeping for you, you know, on the changes that you've made, you know, since the submission, you know, with the trellises and the smaller ADU and, you know, the roof changes and some of those kinds of things. We're challenging you with, you know, some additional arborist information on that southeast corner. We're challenging you, you know, to locate, you know, the pool equipment, you know, the HVAC, you know, equipment, and to look at, you know, coordination of fences, you know, and the garage building adjustments, you know, and I think you can resolve this, you know, and, you know, before the next meeting.
We had a comment in the back.
I also will remove my idea of not taking, of taking the other tree out of the circle, so that it is just the one tree, because it is fabulous. But don't ever light it.
So just on the tennis court, we don't oppose the tennis court. We're concerned about the geology. And the geologic studies have not included that section of our yard from our geologist. It's only been in the area where the pool's built. They avoided that area because it was mapped to be difficult to construct on. The geologist serving 857 hasn't been on our property to measure the soil that's below the tennis court. And again, the property line to the tennis court is a 14-foot span, and then it goes 170 feet across my yard to the creek bed. And that's the piece I'm worried about. And we would like to have an independent geologist come and actually do the work and decide whether or not it makes sense to do anything or not do anything in terms of mitigation. And so if you could allow us to make sure that happens, that would be our ask.
Then I can't ask for, you know, work beyond their property. what we can potentially ask for, if we feel compelled. Is to, because the oldest thing on this site is tennis field. And frankly, for its age, it looks really good. So I didn't have any concern about it. I'm responding, to concerns about the map situation, which oftentimes is not accurate.
Okay, I mean, this is very important to me, and I would like to see it studied. And I have a geologist coming tomorrow to look at it, so I can get an independent evaluation. I'm happy to share whatever thoughts he comes back with. But I think it's important to respect the fact that topography and geology doesn't respect property boundaries, and we are right below a long span that is very steep. And so if you can,
I get that, Dan, and I'm not gonna, enter into more discussion of
That's
this,
fine.
except to say that of all the things that are up on that hill, this has been there longer than anything else. And I think it actually portends very, very little risk to anybody, because, it's right now doing a pretty good job. So I think that, based on the concern, if Roma, can, write back, anything specific about, the potential or what mitigations might need to be included, with your remediation to reduce the amount of tennis court itself. And as that court gets smaller, if the fence can be pulled in, I'd encourage that as well, rather than preserving, the fence where it is. So, so I'm recommending, continuance to the next available meeting, giving you guys a chance, to, work through, some of these issues, and, come back.
We'll get there. It's gonna be wonderful.
I will note, that's fine, we can make these really quick. We didn't have the ability to make these changes just because of the timeline and record. So it's a sequencing that we all fall into. Like, these could have been made a month ago.
You're
but
living my life.
I know.
I mean,
All right.
I live this life.
Yeah.
I feel your pain. I feel uncomfortable even doing it, except that I think that, it's to the benefit of you and to the project, and to the relationship with all the neighbors. I think there's some very good comments around, the process, that we'll be utilizing, as, the ASCC develops our memo to essentially a commission memo. We're wanting to reconsider, things not dissimilar to what Christie's been noted, talking about with noticing, and, what people have talked about with the late delivery of, communications and so forth. So you're just kind of in a bind. But I do want you to know that what I hear from my fellow commissioners is you like the project. You understand why you did, have done all the things. I think we just want to, resolve a few of these things before we give you, the approval. But in the meantime, you've got some things to clean up anyway.
We'll have a better project than you.
So
All right, can you motion that this comes back to ASCC, or do we have to go back for county health, engineering, all that? Or we just
Comes back to you.
perfect?
And is the idea that when is our next meeting? I mean, is the idea that this happens at our next meeting?
What I'm hoping is that, is that this can come back as soon as it's submitted. Because these are, all of the other, I's have been dotted and the T's have been crossed, and the kinds of changes, that we're talking about are not material to the larger.
Can we not
Hopefully
then
see you at
request
the
them
next
as conditions?
Mhm.
Can we not then request these changes as conditions of an approval?
You could, but it takes away their opportunity, to make more substantive changes if they want. And I think that.
Well, if they're keeping the tennis court, I don't know how
I'm not
substantive those
suggesting
changes can be.
take the things. I mean, if you'd like to, make that motion, Ken, I'm happy, to entertain it. If you can wrap this all up into a tidy little package, go for it.
I'm trying to read Gina right now.
Well, so here's what I would say.
Plan it really close.
If I can, well, no, I'm just, the reason why I asked is I think that it can be hard to get a quorum. It's not a guarantee for every meeting. And I think that is an issue, that makes this even more difficult. If you're ready and you have to wait 2 or 3 meetings, it's 5 weeks, 6 weeks, that is significant, and I can understand. I guess I don't necessarily disagree with what Kenny's saying of trying to see, can we approve with conditions? Because I think it is a pretty significant, in terms of timing to push this out to another meeting. Because I mean, people have been complaining that we don't have we're skipping all these meetings, but sometimes it's a quorum problem. Sometimes too, it's just there's not projects that are up for review and ready. So I think that's why I wasn't trying to be coy with with Kenny's suggestion. I mean, I think I agree, Carter, you said too. And if we could wrap it into an approval with conditions, I think it makes sense to try. If we do it and we find there's just too much open-ended stuff or things feel too subjective, or if we're not ultimately comfortable with it or something, then I think that I would be fine with
Take a crack
going.
at it?
Let me just,
Okay.
yeah, I think take a crack at it. I think the fencing is probably the hardest thing, to resolve it. Unless you just said no more than one fence.
No more than one thing.
No more than one fence.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
and our conditions often
You made it
can
so
come
easy.
back to 2
No more than one thing.
committee members
Just saying,
without
it's,
needing
it
a
was,
meeting.
it's worth
If they
trying.
Cut down the tree in the back.
Okey doke, go for it.
That's still gotta move the pool, right? So, okay, so let's make some notes.
Okay, so move pool lights, eliminate driveway lighting. What's the other thing you said? Was there a gate light? I think there's just illuminated house lights.
It's just illuminated.
23 stays.
Never.
It's in the
I
back.
think it's a fire, Woodside
It's a-
fire
It's a
condition.
new fire.
They have to be lit now, I believe. Yeah, either
Thank you.
backlit or with light shining on them. Isn't, Adrienne, do you happen to know? I believe the Woodside Fire Protection District's requirement for house numbers is that they are illuminated.
I don't know off the top. Jamie, is that
Do you know that, Jamie?
in their approval?
I don't know that,
I can look that up.
I'm not certain of that. However, ASCC does have the authority to approve illuminated light
Let's see.
for street numbers. So it is at the discretion.
I can just look at the Woodside.
HVAC and pool equipment need to come back to somebody.
So they have, just a question about pool equipment. They do have pool equipment shown in the plans. Are we taking issue with the location of that? It is down north, it kind of
To below the
west.
pool?
It's where there's the little pool house. It's kind of along the side there. I don't know if you want to look at
We
this.
still want it to echo through the canyon there, that.
Can I speak to that? At the building phase submittal, one of planning review, the components for planning review is to ensure that it complies with the noise ordinance for the town. And so that is something that is always reviewed at that point in time. And so that would be a requirement. And as long as the equipment is within the setbacks, the base zoning setbacks, and complies with the noise ordinance, that has always been a building phase portion of review, not the ASCC portion of review.
Yes, I would say we should not put that in there, but, okay, and then oh, here's the woodside comments. I think I might be wrong, sorry. They, just to be contrast, they say orange tall with half-inch stroke that are visible from the street and contrasting to its background. So if you want to get rid of illumination. Sorry, Kenny.
Looks for me, it's just a suggestion, all those, and I don't think there should be there should be planting down the driveway. You know, I don't want them to have their view blocked, and I don't think they need it. Maybe a couple of toyons.
Well, would you want to say no planting down the driveway except if neighbor coordination?
Well, sure, I mean,
Well, but that ends up. you know,
That feels a little too
That's a no.
demanding, yeah.
The,
down the
it
driveway.
could be conditioned that the one or two ASCC members review the driveway, an updated driveway proposal for
Yeah.
landscape.
Yeah, I
agree.
think that's
Live oak
appropriate.
should come out on the driveway,
Peter?
and then there are these 5 live oaks, that's a lot of oaks.
Go ahead, Peter. Come up to them.
And a little bit disturbing given the time frame that we've had to look at this. I'm just curious. But you've got the plans in front of you, but if you look at the 260, I think, pages of supplemental material, including the written comments from neighbors and the geotechnical reports and the full arborist reports, I mean, the amount of information seems to me to be absorbed in 2 weekend holiday days is overwhelming. I spent a lot of time on it, but I didn't get all the way through it. And
So the intent of what we're,
we're struggling with a lot of different issues at the same time. Anyway, my apologies. I appreciate what you're trying to do. And also appreciate that you guys are up to date. I didn't even know about the story until a week ago. So.
I can't hear him.
I think there is this, I think you're right. Right now, we're stuck with this process that is a lot of work and time for the homeowners, and then an incredibly short amount of time for us and the meeting notices. I think what we're trying to do here is write conditions that allow for time to get through it all. Both between the residents, applicants, and yourselves, the neighbors. And then in doing an approval with conditions, instead of asking for it to come back to a full meeting, just allows us not to have to wait for the full meeting. It still will come back to us for review as well.
Yeah, and I'd just like to, just to supplement what Kenny's saying too, I think for all of us, what the project has gone through, comprehensive review by Jamie. There is a geological consultant who's also reviewing the geotechnical, who are people who are qualified to be doing that review. Same with the civil, the town contracts with NV5 to do these really thorough reviews. And I agree with Kenny that we're kind of forced into this situation where things do feel hurried, but I don't think that it's a negative or fault of the ASCC, that we do trust the assessments that are being done by these professionals who the town contracts with, who are, more in the weeds on a lot of these issues. I think it's our role to be looking at this in the context of the design guidelines. So, we're not, coming here as civil engineers or geotechnical engineers. That's just not our role here. And so I think, again, we completely understand your feedback. I probably, no one was necessarily here for our last meeting, but Carter and I are on a subcommittee to try to come up with a plan to present and get voted on for how to modify the system in a way that works better for homeowners, it works better for neighbors, it just ultimately works better for everyone, because I think there's a very mutual consensus here that none of us are really happy with how it goes. So I want to acknowledge that, but then also just kind of mention that it's not really our role, at least in my opinion, it's not really our role on the ASCC to be, scouring the geotechnical plans, because someone has done that already.
There's a really excellent point that I think needs in there that needs to be reiterated is, they've hired civil engineers and geotechs. The town has a third-party civil engineer and a third-party geotech who reviews that as well before they get a building permit. So when it comes to the civil engineering questions and the geotech questions, it's pretty well covered.
Yeah, our issue, our charge is ultimately, to make sure that those things happen. But the reason design review was developed in Portola Valley in the first place is to make things more compatible, between neighbors, and to make and to preserve the ethos, of open space and landscape, being superior, to architecture, and architecture being more subservient. We do a very good job of doing it. I want to do it earlier, and do it, more civilized, quiet manner, without so much investment, so that Adam can make changes, in a couple minutes. Not having to coordinate 435 pages, of supporting documents. So,
What do you want to do?
you guys almost have this, this.
We're close.
We had another comment.
Let's keep trying to get this.
If I may, let me just suggest that, as you guys consider conditional approval, I might raise the question as to whether we're missing an opportunity to try to create harmony between neighbors in Portola Valley. There's been, specific concerns raised by 3 of the 4 adjoining properties and by others in Portola Valley. And there's been a lot of discussion, obviously, over the last 90 minutes or 2 hours about possible solutions, but is it not worth, rather than providing a conditional approval now, is it not worth trying to allow for some process between the neighbors and the people who are affected by the project to resolve those before coming back?
That's what we're trying to do.
And I don't disagree
with-
the issue here is that, the West Beach Homeowners Association is a little different than the rest of Portola Valley, in that it has its own design review, and that design review is already opined, and provided approval. So, the reality is that we shouldn't be here, dealing with, any of those kinds of issues at this point, because that is intended to preserve, harmony in their own neighborhood, rather than the overall town. So, I've been swayed by my fellow commissioners, to sort out list the things that we're concerned about, and have the conditions work out how we're going to get those resolved. I don't think that it's that far apart. I think there's a little bit of stuff around a garage thing, that it is potentially in dispute, and it may never find everybody being all happy. But there's an awful lot of negotiations where success is defined by everybody's feeling a little bit disappointed. So the one issue that I think is is probably harder to resolve is, fences and fencing locations and the amount of fence. That's gonna take, you know, kind of opening up and saying, hey, I'll build this fence and I'll help you take this one down and, we'll have one fence and some of that kind of stuff. And I know that, clearer heads will prevail and, it'll all become, pretty well resolved. And then some mutual landscaping, that would help, ameliorate, some of those adjacency issues. So,
I'd like to see the landscape plan come back
Mhm.
to a member. I mean, we decided one fence, whatever it is, however neighbors want to work it out, one.
We've
fence.
asked for fencing plans to come back.
Changing the pool light.
Yeah, I mean, we
Okay.
could say. we're
eliminate the driveway lights and
Eliminate driveway light.
fencing plan.
All
Do you
the
want to
other-
say, just, sorry, one second, the planting plan and fencing plan to come back in front of 1 to 2 members? I think. Do you want to have anything in here about tree 32?
I
Or
think that's- I think-
Does that get
32.
enveloped into the
Well, I
landscape?
think specifically, there's a desire to, to retain, retain, much of that tree, because, it's been described as, framing two views, by, the design team, and that, unless it's impossible, it should be done.
Opened up, it would be gorgeous.
And, and what about the septic and the site? Does that get bundled in with
That'd be
this
bundled in with
landscape?
the landscape.
The landscape review?
What else? The invasive
Minimum-
management, I mean, the invasives need to be managed now. I mean, if you wait till the end, everybody in Westridge is gonna be covered. So, I mean, that needs to happen immediately. Those grasses, the Stipa tenuissima, the euphorbia, and the Detrichia, they need to be, or you're just gonna contaminate everybody. So, I mean, it was alarming to walk on the backside of that, around the pool. Absolutely alarming. So that needs to happen now.
There's a willingness to reduce the plate height of the garage by 2 feet.
You can't take 2 feet up. I don't think. I think it'll start, it'll start to look strange compared to the other thing.
I did like your idea, though, of changing the entrance to the bike area.
Yes.
So that it's not facing the neighbor with a light. You could just turn it.
What do you make that a condition?
I don't know.
I think, the
That was
condition would
taken
say that there would be, an adjustment, to the plan, such that the access, to, the bike portion of the garage, be from the driveway, and not from the end of the building.
Get the pool light. Do we need to know where the AC is?
I think that was not in our purview.
AC?
Is that correct?
Yeah, the HVAC.
Oh, right. HVAC, all right. That's all I have on my list.
That's all I have on me.
Okay. So formulate that into a motion and we'll move it on.
Come on, Kenny, this is your baby.
I think Gina has better notes.
Poor Kenny's computer is dying.
I move.
Okay, so I guess I'm making a motion to approve with the following conditions, additional conditions. That's right, because there's already some. So I just need to- So the first condition being to move pool lights to face the house. Second, eliminate the driveway lighting. Third, no illuminated house numbers. Fourth, for 1 to 2 members to review the planting plan, fencing plan, and the septic area, and in general landscape. Invasive management of the invasive species as soon as possible. And then an adjustment to the plan of the bike storage to reorient the access towards the driveway.
Anything else? Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
In favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Well, you know,
No opposed.
2.5 hours, but we 3.5 hours actually, since this afternoon. Good, you know what? Good for you for making us persist.
Um, my wife will regret it, but,
Good.
she's got the
Well,
kids
some
on her
things
own,
are just-
but,
so tough.
I
Good to get it done.
I think we dearly hope that you take this as an opportunity in meeting these conditions, working with your neighbors. Because what we've tried to do here is to write these conditions with your neighbors' concerns in mind.
I just wanted to ask, because it wasn't clear to me, I think the committee was recommending a couple of things in particular. One was around the height of the garage and the other one was around hedges, but those weren't addressed in the resolution. So was that something specifically that you were suggesting be dealt with differently, or?
The hedges is that issue is encapsulated in the need to come back with a landscape plan that gets reviewed by a couple members. The garage, there was a specific recommendation around the design of the garage to reduce the impact on the neighbor on that side.
So there wasn't a recommended change on the height then? No.
And I will take a look at the hedging and also under the 10-foot retaining wall, you know, just that there should be some softening of all of that stuff. But yeah, I mean, just resubmit and I'll take a look. Good job, you guys.
What's next on the agenda?
Staff reports, no staff reports, any committee reports.
Do we have any minutes?
I'm way behind. I just, yeah. Yeah, I am. Oh my God. Yeah, so I have a bunch.
Recording?
Our
Meeting's adjourned.
meeting's adjourned? Okay, thank you.